It was a whirlwind nomination process capped off in true reality TV style. Less than 2 hours after Justice Amy Coney Barrett was confirmed to the Supreme Court, Donald Trump hosted her live public swearing-in ceremony at the White House, featuring a speech seemingly designed to pour salt in the wounds of Democrats.
This is a momentous day for America, for the United States Constitution, and for the fair and impartial rule of law. The Barrett family has captured America's heart. It is highly fitting that Justice Barrett fills the seat of a true pioneer for women. It's Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
As for the new justice, she promised to act as an independent voice.
I will do my job without any fear or favor, and that I will do so independently of both the political branches and of my own preferences.
But many Democrats remain skeptical as their addition cements a 6-3 conservative majority that will shape the court for generations to come on issues surrounding the Affordable Care Act, immigration policy, abortion rights, and possibly even the results of the presidential election. Echoing the thoughts of many Democrats, Illinois Senator Dick Durbin tweeted, "I believe my Republican colleagues will regret the consequences of taking us down this path, but will they?" I'm joined by retired federal judge Nancy Gertner, who's now a senior lecturer at Harvard Law. Judge Gertner, it's great to see you as always.
Good to be back.
I don't want to spend time speculating about specific issues. Hell should decide. We've done that. I think I've done it with you. I want to step back. A couple of years ago, Donald Trump was unhappy with a judge, called that judge an Obama judge. Chief Justice Roberts actually responded, saying there are no Obama judges, no Trump judges. I'm with Trump on this one. I think there are Trump and Obama judges, and I think Amy Coney Barrett is a Trump judge. Which side are you on?
Let me answer in a sort of more complicated fashion. So there's a question of who the judge is in terms of the decisions and their rulings. Then there's a question of how the judge appears. With respect to Roberts' comment, I agree with him that there are no Clinton judges, there are no Bush judges, and there are no Obama judges. In the sense that although political science has talked about the president who appointed this or that judge, in fact, decisions were in a range which was widely described as the legal mainstream. But there are Trump judges. And why do I say that there are Trump judges? Because he has branded his judges, because he has said they are his judges, because the selection process, which is a unique selection process, has outsourced the selection of judges to the Federalist Society. Whereas there were Federalist Society judges under Bush, but there were multiple pipelines. You didn't have to swear allegiance to anything or be a member of any organization to be a Bush judge, Bush 1 or Bush 2. This is a single source pipeline, at the end of which Trump talks about his judges. So the public, I worry, will perceive these judges as Trump judges because of his label, and that'll affect the entire bench.
By the way, if people are wondering, you were nominated by Bill Clinton, for those who don't recall. You know, Chief Justice Roberts has been the key vote, 5-4 in the Affordable Care Act. Just the other day, 4-4, let's stand a ruling out of Pennsylvania that allowed extended time to count and take mail-in ballots. In those cases, just one flip, Roberts alone, was enough to flip the decision. When Roberts can't do it alone anymore, when he needs to bring a conservative with him, will he have any sway over, maybe not over Alito and Thomas, but over the three Trump nominees when he says we have to maintain some credibility and some balance in this court? Or are they all free agents?
They're obviously all free agents in terms of what they actually have to do. Will he have any sway? They all have to worry about the legitimacy of the court. And as you know, Justice Marshall said, decades and decades and years ago, the court doesn't have its own army. So everyone has to worry about the legitimacy of the court. Whether that will be Roberts prevailing on them and having the same kind of authority that he had before this is another question entirely. But they have to worry about that. If they look like they are Trump's handmaidens, not a great choice of words, but that's what came to mind. Then, then the court will be in trouble, and not just, as I said before, not just that court, but all courts will be in trouble.
Because of the trickle-down effect. I understand that. I
Right.
said to you at the top, I didn't want to discuss specific cases, but actually now I do. I want to talk about this election and whether or not it could be decided in the Supreme Court. Here's Donald Trump from earlier today, Judge.
It would be very, very proper and very nice if a winner were declared on November 3rd instead of counting ballots for 2 weeks, which is totally inappropriate, and I don't believe that that's by our laws.
And by the way, many people believe because more of his voters will show up to the polls on Election Day that he might be ahead on Election Day, even if he ultimately loses. Well, Justice Kavanaugh, in a concurring opinion yesterday in the Wisconsin mail-in case, seemed to be saying something very similar to what Trump said. Here's Justice Kavanaugh. Those states want to avoid the chaos and suspicions of impropriety that can ensue if thousands of absentee ballots flow in after Election Day and potentially flip the results of an election. Now, of course, the absurdity of that is they don't flip the results of the election because there aren't results of the election till all the votes are counted. Having said that, that raises for me the concerns after Trump has been grooming the public as best he can for the election to be stolen from him on November 4th and 6th. You hear what Kavanaugh has to say as well. Is it preposterous to think that this court could ultimately decide this election?
It's not preposterous because, after all, we had Bush v. Gore that handed the election to Bush. But the election would have to be close. I mean, that's really the only scenario here in which the Supreme Court could decide it, unless there would be a challenge, a wholesale challenge to absentee ballots that were postmarked on the day of the election or received before the election, but only counted afterwards.
Yeah,
Exactly. But since election, but that's a state-by-state determination. In other words, the way elections are conducted are completely determined by state law. And so the Republicans would have to come up with an overarching federal theory that would basically wipe out decisions that are made to allow this or that, this or that kind of counting.
Well, I'll give you one. Can I give you one? Since you mentioned Bush v. Gore, there were 3 judges in that case whose opinion or reference in their opinion is being cited by the Pennsylvania GOP that wants a rehearing in that 4-4 case that I mentioned a minute ago. And their contention is the final word on electors, electoral college members, is not with the voters, but is with state legislatures, meaning a Republican state legislature could be in a state where a majority of the voters voted for Joe Biden. But the legislature, under that Bush v. Gore standard, could say the legislature believes the appropriate electors are Trump electors. There are a decent number of states that have Republican legislatures that could follow that lead. It seems to me that that's exactly the kind of thing that this president and his supporters are looking for, no?
It may well be, but again, it will be state by state. In Bush v. Gore, there was an equal protection challenge that got it up to the U.S. Supreme Court. That there was sort of suddenly this was a new way of counting, the new way of counting the ballots than had existed before. This is more likely to be state by state and state courts rather than the federal court. What's distinguished the cases that have gone up to the Supreme Court now about extending deadlines is that the people that wanted deadlines extended, they chose to go to the Supreme Court to argue they should be allowed to do this under the federal Constitution. It's a bit of a stretch to think about a federal theory that would invalidate state electors. Now, state legislatures are a different matter completely, and you're quite right. In different states, the legislature certifies the electors. In some states, the governor may. So it could be chaos. Chaos not because of mail-in ballots. It could be chaos because we have a patchwork quilt of electoral regulations.
Well, you may not think it's likely, but I would argue that Justice Kavanaugh suggests it may be likely. But I have one more thing for you, and I only have 30 seconds left. I haven't asked you, this is a big debate in the Democratic Party about what to do after the ramming through of Coney Barrett. There are some people like Ed Markey here that say end the filibuster, expand the court. Joe Biden's taking a middle ground. He's appointing a commission, bipartisan, 180 days to restore the credibility you talked about before, the balance, et cetera. These judges, 48, 53, 55, the three Trump nominees, they could be there 30 to 40 years if they live as long as Justice Ginsburg. Should they expand the court, Judge Gertner, the Democrats, if they get control of the Senate and the presidency?
Let me take the Biden approach for a moment, because I do a fair amount of teaching internationally, and no other high court is run like our court. Every other high court in virtually every Western democracy has term limits, a retirement age, rules with respect to conflict of interest, rules with respect to when they have to disqualify themselves.
But we don't.
Yeah, and so while it's clear that this selection process and the circumstance of the selection process is what triggered this examination, everyone should want to re-examine this. There's something wrong about the happenstance that one popularly elected president could wind up with no appointees and the next president could wind up with 3. There's something wrong with that process, and everyone should agree with it. So I agree with it. There should be a commission to examine all of it. You know, people are talking about, will Barrett recuse herself in a case involving the election? Well, there are no rules with respect to the Supreme Court. So everything has to be reexamined and up for grabs.
Fair enough. Judge Gertner, it's good to see you. Thanks so much for your time.
Good to see you. Take care.